This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeff Malinoff. Boy, oh boy, did we have a lot to happen in the last 24 hours. You know, after the show ended yesterday, and I was like, wow, we got a lot done, and I'm like doing all the editing and posting it on social media and all that stuff, and making sure it got out to the right people. And it was posted publicly, of course. I'm driving home, and my phone kept vibrating and kept going off. I wasn't looking at it, obviously, but I was just like, I wonder what's all this commotion about. But I knew the chime was my Bleacher Report chime, so I look at it, and wow, so many different signings. And then the day kept going, and they kept getting more signings, free agency-wise, and it kept going. So we have a lot to talk about in the free agency department. We also have some NBA talk about fan interactions yet again, and a huge fight between the Cavaliers and the Toronto Raptors. Well, I mean, it was based on two guys fighting, but it was kind of serious, in all honesty, how it looked. It looked pretty violent. I mean, not violent, but it was unprovoked. Well, maybe not unprovoked, obviously, but it was a little much. It was a little too intense for my personal liking. But with that being said, we'll start right with the good stuff. As even earlier today, we have a couple of signings planned, intentions of signings. C.J. Mosley, the Pro Bowl linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens, intends to sign with the New York Jets for a 5-year, $85 million deal with a $51 million guarantee. And people were kind of upset about the Quan Alexander signing for the 49ers yesterday, about how much he's getting off a torn ACL. But, I mean, this guy's getting guaranteed what basically I think Quan Alexander is going to be making. So it's a little, even more. I think Quan Alexander's was a $50.1 million contract. And C.J. Mosley's getting more guaranteed than he's just making in his 4 years. So you could say that there is a difference in aggressiveness between the Jets and the 49ers. And obviously they're both fighting for Le'Veon Bell, who actually tweeted like he doesn't know which team to choose. He says he's torn at the moment. Oh, Quan Alexander was a $54 million deal. So C.J. Mosley's guarantee is almost as much as Quan Alexander's entire contract. So that's absurd when you look at it in that standpoint. But of course, C.J. Mosley is a very talented linebacker, so it's a good addition to the New York Jets, definitely. And talk about money to burn. I know, like when people were complaining about the 49ers, I'm like, they have plenty of cap space. They can afford that kind of contract, and it's a lot of heavy upfront contract. So in theory, it's actually a smart contract. And then comparing this contract, I just having it at $51 million guaranteed is insane. I'm not sure what the most guaranteed is in NFL history, but that's got to be close, right? I got to look that up myself. But, man, these contracts are getting more and more, I guess you can say, lucrative as the years are going on. I know Matt Ryan had a $100 million guaranteed contract. Aaron Rodgers had close to that in his guarantee. So, but for a defensive player, Khalil Mack had $90 million guaranteed, but there's a lot of contracts like this now that are getting higher and higher in pay, and just 5 years, $85 million is an incredible contract. Again, the Jets do have money to burn, and they have plenty of money as it is, so it makes sense that they can afford that. So, and they can still go after a Le'Veon Bell type of contract as well. I think they have the second highest cap space in the NFL at the moment, right under the Colts. And the thing is, you're seeing all these signings. I'll talk about all the signings, don't worry. But I just want to state the point. There's a team missing in all these signings. I haven't seen the Colts make any moves. And they have over $100 million in their cap space. And yet, they're pretty quiet leading up to Wednesday, leading up to tomorrow when the official season begins. So I'm curious to know what is, maybe they're waiting until it actually begins. Maybe, I don't know, but it's one of those things you're looking at and going, well, they better make a move fast. Well, maybe not make a move fast, but they should make a move, at least spend some of that money. That you don't have, obviously you don't have to spend all that cap space. You don't need to just waste it all, of course, just because you have it. If you want to wait till like another season or so to actually go through it and spend it more for a free agent market, that's perfectly fine. That might be smart in a sense if you're like thinking ahead and thinking about other contracts, and when those are ending, when someone else is an unrestricted free agent that you want, then you could overpay. Well, maybe an overpay is a strong word, but then you can go after a guy and really let loose with the cash, with the paycheck. So, with that being said, the C.J. Mosley contract seems to be going well for the Jets. Again, they have money to burn. And, of course, we'll see what the Chiefs continue to do. But with that, and there was also another one today, but before I get into another signing that happened today, because I'll have to talk about the team itself, Nick Foles is a Jaguar. I think you already know this, but my gosh, his contract is absolutely for a guy who's just a backup not too long ago, but made a playoff run for the ages and became a Super Bowl MVP, being only the second quarterback in NFL history being only the second quarterback in the last 20 years to beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. He gets a 4-year, what's going to be, because it can't be official yet until tomorrow, but it's an $88 million 4-year contract with $50.125 million guaranteed. So, Foles' deal has a max value of $102 million. Dang, Daniel. I know that's an old meme, but moving on from that, let's just forget that happened. I guess what the Jaguars are trying to do is get back to the playoffs, obviously. And, I've said this before on the show that the defense didn't just become terrible all of a sudden. It was mainly due to the fact that team was exhausted. That defense was exhausted because it was on the field for so long. Time of possession is such a crucial thing when it comes to the NFL. And if your offense, the Jaguars' offense, had a very weak time of possession, when Bortles was doing 3-and-outs or throwing careless interceptions and so on and so forth, then you got to look at it and go, okay, something needs to be done to this. If we get a guy that can get those crucial first downs, or a guy that can just stay on the field for 5-10 minutes or even longer on the field per drive, give our guys some time to rest so when they go back on the field they're not exhausted, then yes, you can look at it and go, hey, our defense can do even better when it's on the field because they're more rested. And instead of continuously going onto the field over and over and over again every 2 to 3 minutes, if that, and you're still exhausted, you know? So it's one of those things you're looking at it and going, wow, they really need time off the field to rest because you can't do everything. The defense can't score every play. The defense can't stop them in every drive. There's going to be some mistakes made. And that's not saying, oh, they're so bad they're making mistakes. No, it's because they're so exhausted on the field that the mistakes are just because of their stamina being low, if you will. So with that being said, having a guy like Nick Foles, and hopefully they'll have a solid running back behind him because they don't have Carlos Hyde anymore, and Leonard Fournette seems to be good as gone. So with that, if he can just hold on to the ball, get like 3 first downs, at least 3 first downs a drive, or 2, or at least 1, you know, just keep a drive alive and not be a 3 and out immediately. Then the defense can really step up their game and really be that number 1 defense again. So Nick Foles has a lot riding on this contract, of course, and I can see the Jaguars definitely being a contender yet again. But that is the biggest quarterback deal so far this offseason, and it looks like Teddy Bridgewater is going to re-sign with the Saints. He got a bigger offer from the Dolphins, but it seems that he likes the culture in the Saints locker room, and it seems to him, and I think it's maybe a foregone conclusion, that he's going to be the next starter for the New Orleans Saints once Drew Brees hangs up the cleats. So I guess that makes sense in a way. I get it, you know. So it's more about like what your future holds and what more success can be rather than just the money. Because he's getting a huge offer from the Dolphins, sure, but he obviously has a better chance to win a Super Bowl with the Saints if he stays there and becomes a quarterback when Drew Brees is gone, rather than being with the Dolphins, who seem to be in a rebuilding period for the foreseeable future, and rebuilding means losing a lot. So that's the case there. That's the case I see mainly over there. So I understand why he wanted to stay in New Orleans. And, of course, does he really want to move all the time? Like, he's been moving for a couple of years now, so that's also something to think about. But with that being said, I think it's probably the best move for him in general. Just the talent around there wise is good. And then also, since this is considered a defensive free agency as well as a defensive draft, Matthew the Honey Badger signed with the Chiefs, is expected to sign with the Chiefs on a 3-year, $42 million deal. So now the Honey Badger is off the market as far as we know. So both Landon Collins and the Honey Badger are both off. So I guess what leaves the best possible safety option for a team is possibly Earl Thomas, which seems like he might be going still to the Cowboys. There's talk of him going to the 49ers and reuniting with Richard Sherman. It's really unknown where he's going to go. We obviously know he's not going to play for the Seattle Seahawks again, so we'll see where that decision is made. And him and Le'Veon Bell are like the 2 biggest names that are still left in free agency-wise, I think. Just based off name value, maybe not talent value anymore, based off Earl Thomas's age getting up there, of course. And, of course, Le'Veon Bell has a year rest, like we talked about yesterday. So we'll see where he goes, because obviously there's like, oh, he was going to go to the Jets. Then he was going to go to the Niners. Now he might be going to the Raiders. So and the Colts were also in that running as well, just because of how much money they have. And they can definitely afford the contract he's asking for. So that could also happen. There's tons of different possibilities for where Le'Veon Bell can go. And I don't know if he's going to make a decision by today, but we'll see how that turns out. Another Ravens linebacker who got signed by another team. The Arizona Cardinals are expected to sign the veteran linebacker Terrell Suggs, who's spent his last 16 years with the Baltimore Ravens. So he's going to the retirement home known as Arizona Cardinals. And it's going by Adam Schefter, who says it's going to be a 1-year, $7 million contract with the Cardinals. He is 36 as a linebacker, so obviously they're not going to break the bank for an old veteran linebacker. And who knows what he would turn out like. Obviously, the age is a big factor in this contract, so they're really not losing a lot of money on this deal because $7 million is probably chump change compared to what they have in the bank. So it makes sense that I think that just a veteran presence on the defensive side could be a usefulness, or they just know that they're not a big market and guys who are the most talented want to win and get money, so they can't really get those guys, but they can get those aging veterans. So I think they're just trying to make a move on the free agent market, and they did that with the Terrell Suggs signing. But another one that happened today that was was probably the biggest one so far for a contender. Sheldon Richardson, the defensive tackle for the Vikings, who had a great career with the Seahawks, has signed a 3-year deal with the Cleveland Browns. So, with that being said, Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network reported the deal is worth $36 million over 3 years. Obviously, none of these signings can become official until tomorrow, but of course, Richardson has 49 tackles, 4.5 sacks in 2018. He spent 2017 with the Seahawks, and he's just a very great. He's a top defender in the league in the defensive tackle position. So great pickup by the Browns, who are becoming one of those elite front offices, to be completely honest with you. I'm extremely impressed by what they have been doing so far, not only with their smart draft picks, but their free agent signings have been stellar this season, and last season they've been good themselves. So I can't believe I'm about to say this, but if you're looking at AFC contenders to be in the Super Bowl, I mean, the Browns aren't a crazy guess or a crazy prediction. Quite honestly, I think they're going to win the AFC North. If they go 12-4, 13-3 would not surprise me based off the talent they have and how good they did last season, all things considered. And with the talent they're grabbing in this offseason, you could see them in the AFC Championship game. You could see them in the Super Bowl. You really can. I know it sounds absolutely insane because it's the Cleveland Browns, and that's been the running joke for the last decade. I get that. But all things must come to an end. All good things must come to an end. And, the fun we've all had at the Cleveland Browns' expense I feel like it's ending. And as fans of this football, you're not thinking, oh man, they're gonna be good. You're thinking, oh, good for them, they're gonna be good, because they've been going through some heartbreak and some disappointments and some terrible seasons and some terrible coaches and some terrible draft picks in the past. And knowing that it's actually clicking is a feel good moment, if you will. So that is something to think about. But those are the main signings I've seen so far. If anything else happens during the show, even if we're talking about basketball or something else, I will move over to that. But again, when you're looking to finish up other signings that happened, Frank Gore seems to be signing with the Bills, so he's playing another year. Deshaun Jackson is going back to the Eagles for a 6th and 7th round pick in a trade. So he's going back to Philadelphia. And that seems to be all of them so far. All the ones that are been announced at least. And again, nothing's 100% until Wednesday, but I think these are all foregone conclusions. When you think about it, if they're reported like this, it seems to me that they're a done deal in a sense. And, it's tough to say who's winning free agency, quote unquote, because there's always going to be a team that is winning the offseason, because that's just That's just always been a thing. And, it's never been the best of luck to win the offseason, quote unquote. I mean, how many times has the Redskins won the offseason, quote unquote? And they did absolutely nothing with it. And so I'm not sure if that's something to brag about. Oh, yeah, we won the offseason. Maybe if you just do medium work in the offseason, don't sign a lot of guys, but just sign some quality players and not make the big headline of, oh, you won the offseason. Then that's when you won the offseason. When you're not making the headline of you winning the offseason, but you got quality players that can boost your team in any way, shape, or form. Like, I think that makes more sense. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but to me, I would pick that over actually winning the offseason because that feels like it's been cursed for quite some time. But we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll do some NBA talk a tad. And, of course, if any new signings or any free agent moves happen as the show is on, I will definitely tell you. And we will be right back right after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome out of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Just finished up with the NFL signings that happened in the last 24 hours because after the show ended, like I said, all these signings happened. So, of course, it's one of those things in where you're looking at going, well, you couldn't do this when I was on the air. Of course not, because every time we end the show, something happens. Like, it's a trend. More often than not, that's what happens. Like, more often than not, when our show ends and we're done for the day, that's when everyone decides to make headlines, So, well, I guess that gives us stuff for the next day, granted, but I don't know. I just wish we could do it as it's happening. We had some things happen as it was happening, like the trade deadline for the NBA and such and stuff like that, but I don't know. I just wish there was I hope there's at least one major signing or trade or something that happens in the world of the football world. But moving on from that, we have NBA talk. And about the NBA talk mainly is a huge fight. Maybe not a huge fight, excuse me. But it was a pretty intense altercation, as during the Cavaliers-Rockets game, there was a big pass deep, like it was a full court pass, if you will, and it's hard to recall if it was for a Cav or a Raptor, but it was basically what happened was, like I said, there was a deep pass down court. They both kind of, Marquise Chris and Serge Ibaka were kind of tied up. And Marquise Chris, like, he falls to the ground, Ibaka does, and Marquise Chris kind of just walks away. I don't see anything that, I think he says something. It doesn't really look like he said. He's just walking away from the incident, if you will. And Ibaka just completely just snaps, gets up, and grabs Chris's throat and starts swinging at him. And honestly, I don't really know what Marquise Chris did to trigger that, or if he even did anything to trigger that, really. But I'm looking at it again. There's a collision, or there's a tie-up. Ibaka falls. Chris walks away. I guess he was upset he didn't pick him up, respect, like help an opposing player up. But man, Ibaka just goes right after his neck. That's what's the scary part. His right arm goes right after his neck, shoves him to the back of the basket, and then starts throwing punches. That is not a very safe. That's a very scary sight, to be completely honest. Just going after the neck in general just really shows bad intentions. Of course, throwing punches does too, but grabbing the neck just seems a little more violent, if you will, than just throwing punches. So with that happening, I don't think Chris should have gotten ejected, to be completely honest with you. He didn't really throw any punches back. It was all Ibaka just trying to hurt him. But it was just a weird incident where you can't really explain the reasoning behind it, because you don't, like, obviously we don't know what happened or before, or something that triggered him before that got him upset and that was like the final straw, or I don't know. It just seems to me that there's more. There's got to be more, right? Or is this just someone just going crazy? It just I don't know. It's tough to realize, like, Marquise Chris didn't, like, physically, jump on him or something like that, or, like taunt him in any way. He literally just walked away from the little collision they had there. Well, not even a collision's a strong word to use. I would say more along the lines of just like a tie-up, and they both fell. Ibaka fell, but it's one of those things you're looking at it and going, is there anything that you can see that would trigger him? And quite frankly, no. I don't see anything in particular that would have triggered Ibaka into grabbing Marquise Chris's throat and start swinging punches at him, So I really don't know what caused all this mayhem, if you will, but it was a very worrying sight, definitely. So hopefully we can move on this. I'm assuming Ibaka is going to get a suspension. I'm not sure for how long, but I just know that Marquise Chris shouldn't get a suspension. I truly believe Marquise Chris should not get a suspension, but we'll see how We'll see how the NBA reacts to this, but I'm assuming that I think it's at least a suspension for one Serge Ibaka. I don't see a reason why he would not be suspended over that altercation that they had. So that should how it work. But we'll see. But the final score of that game was the Cleveland Cavaliers dismantled the Toronto Raptors 126-101. And obviously it's not like, oh, the Cavs can make the playoffs. Obviously they're not making the playoffs, but statement win as they beat one of the better teams in the NBA. So I don't know if this will affect Raptors' momentum or anything like that, but Kevin Love with a 16-point, 18-rebound performance, and Sexton with a 28-point performance. It's all about they're obviously in a rebuilding period. Poor Marquise Chris. 14 minutes on the court, all he gets is 3 rebounds and an ejection. So that's just disappointing all around. Any other big games? The Clippers beat the Celtics 140-115, beating another, kind of showing signs of life for the playoffs, even without Tobias Harris. And the Celtics are looking worse for wear going into the playoffs, of course. And with that being said, like, you go to Thunder and Jazz. The Thunder beat the Jazz 98-89, and probably the lowest scoring game of the year, just because no one got to 100. I'm joking, of course. And Donovan Mitchell's 25 points, of course, wasn't enough, but this could be a playoff matchup. I'm not sure where how they will end in the seeding wise because they're all so close. Oklahoma City is the 4th spot. Rockets have the 3rd. Portland has the 5th. The Clippers move up to the 6th spot. And San Antonio is 7. And Utah drops down with their 2-loss streak to 8. They were all 6, 7, 8 spots are all super close. So if the Jazz keep losing like this, they might lose their spot entirely because the Sacramento Kings and the Minnesota Timberwolves are right on their tail. They're only 4 and 5 games back respectively, and there's plenty of game to play. So with that being said, there's definitely a lot going on again in the bottom of the Western Conference. But if the Jazz hold on into the 8th seed, they'll have to play the Warriors, and that's not good for anybody. But with that being said, other important games that happened, Nets beat the Pistons 103-75. And I'm not sure if this shows a big weakness to the Pistons as they're trying to find a playoff spot. I think as of right now, they're still in a playoff spot. They, I know Celtics 5, Nets is 6. Detroit is 7th place as of right now, and it looks like they're going to hold on to that spot, but it's still very unknown at this time. So we'll see how everything goes down. And like I said, the Rockets beat the Hornets 118-106, a game that not really right on it. Wizards beat the Kings, so I mean that gives the Jazz kind of breathing room still in their 8th seed at the moment. As for the Jazz, their next game is tomorrow against the Suns. So if they lose that game and lose 3 straight, that's a serious problem. And they can easily lose that game because, I mean, the Suns did beat the 2 best teams in the NBA in theory. Well, not in theory. They legitimately did it. So with that, you go on to let's look at today's games in the NBA. We got Cavaliers and 76ers. I think 76ers are just looking to pad their spot in the playoffs. No one's officially clinched it except for the Bucks, if last time I checked. So we'll see how everyone else does. The order, I guess, is still to be determined. Bucks and Pelicans, Pacers, Knicks, Lakers, Bulls, Spurs, Mavericks. The two Texas teams going head to head. Timberwolves, Nuggets, and Trailblazers, Clippers. So we've got some interesting games ahead of us today. And as for tomorrow, we'll talk about the Warriors and Rockets tomorrow because we will be doing a basketball show tomorrow. So we'll get on that, as well as we'll preview it tomorrow and all those other good stuff. But right now, we're going to take another short break. And when we come back, we will be talking more about Russell Westbrook and the incident he had with a fan. And we'll talk about all that because it's quite interesting. We'll talk all about the incident when we come back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, finishing up the day here. And like I said, we're going to finish off with the big Russell Westbrook confronting a fan yet again the other day. And reading this story, I'll read it again because it seems like it needs to be it needs to be told. Because Russell Westbrook yelled at a Jazz fan saying, "I'll F you up, you and your wife," which not the best things to say during a public event, but yeah. But he commented on the altercation after the game, and this is his quote. "The realization of it is, how it started was a young man and his wife in the stands told me to get down on my knees like you used to. To me, that's completely disrespectful. To me, I think it's racial, and I think it's inappropriate." End quote. And I understand what he's saying. I understand that he thinks it's completely disrespectful. And seeing more reports on this, I've seen some people say that's not exactly what he said. Russell Westbrook misheard him. It was, I think it was get down here, like it was something still like attacking him, but I don't think it was something to the nature of a racial attack. I think it was, that's what it's reported at least, by some fans that were there. And, but I know that players are expecting not to, they're saying, like, what do you want us to do? Shut up and play? And the thing that I say with that is fans are going to say horrible and nasty stuff. I know that's just a fact. They're drinking. They're at a sporting event. You're facing against their favorite team. They're going to say horrible, horrible things to you. And I get that sometimes you can't let it slide. I get the outbursts. I understand them. But, you know, as a public figure, you're the one that everyone's going to be quoting. You're the one everyone's going to be looking at when you're the one that snaps. You're the one that fires back at the fans. It's not like wrestling where you're playing a character and you're gonna go off on the fan base to get some heat. That's not what this is about. What you're saying is always going to be recorded. What you're saying is always going to be looked at, and you're always going to be judged by whatever you say. So, to that, I say, I understand that you're saying, oh yeah, the fans should be the one blamed, not me. And of course, saying I'll mess you up, you and your wife, kinda it's obviously threatening, and that's obviously he's obviously in a heated confrontation with the guy. But I just think that it's hard for a player to say, oh, well, he started it. I understand the players. I understand the fans started it. But he was drinking. I know and he was probably drunk, and he was probably just belligerent, and he was probably just wanting to get, he was probably just trying to get under the skin of Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook says again, I don't confront fans, fans confront me. Here in Utah, man, a lot of disrespectful, vulgar things are said to the players here with these fans. It's truly disrespectful. Talk about your families, your kids. It's just disrespect to the game, and I think it's something that needs to be brought up. I'm sorry, but you can't change what fans say. You can't change what they say because they're trying to get under your skin. I don't think they intentionally mean they're actually going to do anything to your wife and children. I don't think it's leading to that point in the slightest. But it is crossing a line. I get that, but what can anyone do about that? What can anyone actually do to reprimand these fans? And sometimes you can't even tell which fans said it because of the fact they're in a sea of people. And I honestly wish we can just I wish people can just shake it off and move on, but I understand they can't. I understand these are crossing barriers. I understand these are crossing lines that should not be crossed. But, I mean, these have been happening in sporting events for years. I mean, decades. And back when, like, I'll give you an example. When Hank Aaron was close to breaking Babe Ruth's record, he got death threats, and his family got death threats, and people were like, I'm going to kill you and your family in front of you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm, blah, 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 maybe not the best term to use, but, like, extreme threats were happening, and to him, and some were probably legit, but like if Russell Westbrook got a death threat today, how would he react to it? I don't know. But the fact is, people have honestly tamed over the years. I know it sounds crazy, but there have been way worse death threats. There have been way worse threats to somebody else in the past to a player. That's never going to change. People trying to get under your skin and doing trash, talking about your wife, talking about your family, talking about your kids, your parents, whatever. Regardless of what happens, how you try to fix it, how you try to make sure it never happens again, it will continue to happen. That's just life, you know? I hate to say it, racism will never end. It's unfortunate, but it's just true. There's always going to be people with these hateful things to say, and I don't know how else to describe it, you know? It's one of those unfortunate circumstances, and where you're looking at it and thinking, how can people say these things? Well, that's how life is now. It's very unfortunate. And with that being said, I know Russell Westbrook is upset. I completely understand why. I don't blame him for being upset. Honestly, I'd probably be upset too if I heard some bad things being said to me and my family. But regardless of what the fan says, regardless of what the fans are remarking, regardless of what anything is regarding when they talk to you about it, you are going to be looked at in a negative light. The fan, yes, but not the fan personally. Individually, the fan will not be looked at because no one knows his name. No one knows who they are, or where they work, or anything about them, just maybe what they're wearing. But they know you. They know your name. They know your career. You are a public figure, a celebrity, and so whatever comments you make will be heard by the world. I'm not saying just let everything they say slide. You can say stuff, but just be careful what you say back. Because obviously people can turn this around on you, and that's not fair. It's obviously not fair, but that's just the way it works. I'm sorry, man. I wish we could try to change how people think or what people want to say, but unfortunately we can't. And that's just the way it goes. And I obviously have never had stuff like that commented about me, but I mean, I remember playing basketball in high school and all that stuff, and you go to an away game. Well, you go to someone else's gym and all that kind of stuff, and you play there, and you get some horrible things said about you, especially in high school, or at that age at least. You do an AAU basketball, and you go to the team you're playing, home gym, if you will. They say horrible things too. And I know it's maybe not a good comparison, but I'm just saying age, sex, race, no matter what, everyone's going to have a different thought process when trying to get under your skin. And when you're the away team, you're public enemy number one in that arena. And it's just one of those things, you're looking at it and going, why can't they just watch the game and shut up? It's just never going to be that way. Trust me, I wish it was. I wish we all can watch the game and cheer when we score and just boo when we're losing and stuff like that. But people are going to say comments. People are going to say hurtful things. Because it's just either they're drunk and they're not thinking clearly, or that's what they actually think. But maybe one day we can get over this, and maybe one day we can all move on and mature. But I honestly don't think that'll happen. But with that, that is our show today. Thank you so much for joining me. And tune us in tomorrow. We'll have plenty more basketball to talk about. We'll have plenty more sports to talk about. Today we're doing the football and fantasy football podcast, so tune into those. And as always, I'm Jeff Malinoff, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.